Welcome to week 3 of Walking in This World, Julia Cameron's sequel to The Artist's Way. I am Shallalla. I'm a creativity coach who specializes in working with singers, and I am here with writer and presenter Joe Holmes. Hi, Joe. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing good, thank you. How's your day going?
My day couldn't be better. It's always such a pleasure to have this appointment in my calendar, and it's really something that I'm looking forward to very, very much. I'm super grateful that we're doing this.
Me too, me too. I can't wait to dive in.
Week 3, discovering a sense of perspective. How did it go for you?
It went well for me, and I did gain new perspectives on different things and dig a few different things up that I thought were interesting. One of the tasks was about anger and to write a list of 50 things that you're angry about. And I did that task and I thought 50 things. I wrote the numbers 1 to 50 down the side of my book and I thought 1 to 50, 50 things I'm angry about. And it's difficult to even think of one thing I was angry about. Then I started with a few things and then it started to grow. And I thought, well, am I actually angry about these things or are these just minor things that I'm slightly bothered by? And a lot of them were things I'm angry at myself about not doing. And I thought that's really interesting. And what that told me and gave me a perspective about myself is that most of my anger, most of my discomfort is actually for things I haven't done and not giving myself a break, and how much difficulty that gives me when I'm actually trying to do things, that I'm always setting these expectations and setting these things I've got to do. So I acted on that. And at the end of the week on Friday, I thought, okay, I've got a few things I want to do. And these are all the things I said I was angry about not doing. So I wrote them down and I worked through them on Friday. And it got to Friday evening and I ticked all of those things off. And there was one thing I hadn't done. So I quickly scrambled to do that. And there was another thing that I was really dreading doing because I had to completely type out text from another document that was like a photo and type it all out. And I thought it's going to take ages. I put on a TV show and was typing out while I was watching it. And I did all of those things. And then I thought, I can't be angry at myself anymore. And in fact, my thoughts after doing that task is none of those things are really things I'm angry about. They're just things that are mild inconvenience. And if these are the things I claim to be anger, then
Mhm.
I'm very lucky not to be an angry person or to have many things to be angry about.
I like that you did that task like really from the beginning to the end. That is really impressive. For me, I did that task and I stopped myself at around 80 things that I'm angry about. And I realized, okay, what I should do now is actually like take this list and like make it into a spreadsheet of things I can't change anymore, things I can change, and where I'm just like, okay, I just have to forgive myself or forgive somebody else for this. And actually, I have to say, I didn't go through with that, so I'm sort of stuck with the list of these things that I'm angry about. And it was really interesting because I tried to do the tasks in German, which is my mother tongue, and so I find it flows a little bit different when I'm doing stuff in English and when I'm doing things in German. And in German, we actually say, "I am angry about," and it makes me angry that, and it's a little bit there's a different vibe to it. And I noticed actually that I was that so it got me thinking about how we phrase it, how we phrase it in German. That was really interesting.
That's interesting how that perception changes and then how you handle that is slightly different, and just a slight word difference. Because I know when I was writing those things out, I wanted to change how I started the sentence because I thought, well, does that really work? Am I really angry about that thing, or is this, anger about in another way? And I feel like sticking to those constraints really makes you evaluate your feelings and how essentially we're both talking about things that we feel anger towards or about or at or because of, but just using different words can change the perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when we think about it, I mean, the Artist Way has this whole essay on anger already, and using anger as fuel. Sorry, and I mean, we talked about it before when we were talking about why Walking in This World is my favorite of the three installment. The Artist Way, Walking in This World, and Finding Water. And it's this chapter. And it's like I could quote everyone, like I could read every essay to you. I love this so, so much. It's like I just look at it and there's like, let's start by getting rid of the nasty labels: crazy, grandiose, flaky, neurotic. Our true nature is creative. And I think it is really, it's an energy thing. And when we say anger is so much energy. It's such a highly energetic emotion, and that we actually, when we keep it inside, we turn it against ourselves, and it becomes depression.
Yeah.
And I really, really love it when she says, "You are not neurotic. You are miserable." And it's like, yes, and it's exactly the same when Eric Meisel says, "You're not depressed. You're existentially sad."
Yeah.
And it feels like psychology has a way of I'm not sure whether the word is the same in English as it is in German, pathologizing, like labeling something as sick, basically everything. And they are labeling notions of the soul, like movements in the soul, as sick, where they are actually just movements.
Yes, and I think this goes back to the whole art is therapeutic, not therapy, and the whole idea of the discourse around mental health as, the whole illness thing. So, anxiety, depression, and having these very strong lines between those diagnoses and our self-diagnosis and what we're then going to do to change that or help that. Are we going to use it as, okay, I recognize how I'm feeling and I'm going to do this myself, or I'm going to seek help of a professional, whether that be therapy, medicinal, whatever that is? Or is it a label we're going to use as an excuse or as a way of putting ourselves in a box or navigating the world in a way that limits us? And I think the same way as those labels such as neurotic or grandiose, whatever they are, they put us in a box that we're putting ourselves in that feels like protection, but really it means we can't move, we can't function, we can't get out of that box. And it's difficult one, because it's, again, we need to acknowledge our feelings, but we have to evaluate and criticize our feelings and be aware that they that they serve a function to warn us,
Mhm.
but how we deal with them and how we overcome them or how we manage them is the real work.
I could go, like, you can see it whenever I'm like staring somewhere. It's like I could go, we could go deep. um, there are, like, I mean, I got so excited that I actually had to send quotes your way via Messenger, because it was just like, this is it, this is it, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And it's like, I am so grateful that there are people who understand artists and who understand creative energy. And if you look at psychology, um, I think I told you this story, and I might have told it on YouTube, but where I was prescribed an antidepressant, and I took it because it was a lifesaver at that moment. But at the same time, I was complaining, like, I even lost my creativity. I don't know who I am anymore. I can't write. I can't do anything. I'm completely lost here. And that was 7 years ago. And then I actually, two years later or something like that, I quit that antidepressant, and all of a sudden everything came back, and I was like, oh my god, this is so amazing. And then they told me it is a well-known side effect that creative people lose their creativity when they take this medication. And I got so mad. I got so mad because it was like, how do you think? Do you really think I have a chance of getting better when you take away my creativity? it's like they have a different priority system. Their priority system was to suppress the symptoms of depression, and my priority was I have to get back to who I am. I have to get back to the creative me, and those two clashed. And I noticed so many times talking to psychologists or people in the mental health profession where they are, yeah, being an artist, that is something like it's a nice hobby, but what are you going to do for real? And it just makes me so mad because they are actually completely missing the point. It's like when you are a creative person, you cannot be healthy when you are not creative. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I think it's a two-step problem, and they're only looking at the first step. And their initial, all they care about, and rightly so, because they've obviously only got a limited capacity of what they can do, but then they're limiting their thinking as well, is by looking at the first step, which is surviving. Their job is to make sure you survive and don't die. And that's their priority, to make sure that you go out of there and you're alive. But as humans, as creative people, we sometimes overlook that and look to the second step, which to us is always been more important because we're told it's more important, and that's thriving. And when you're a creative person, thriving means making art. So if you're surviving and you aren't thriving, then you never get over that surviving boundary, because what's the point? There's no meaning there. And as you know, without that meaning, we feel lost, like you felt lost. And that's terribly difficult to overcome if people around you only saying, well, all you have to do is survive, and then why aren't you happy? It's like going to homeless people, or this is a metaphor that might not work, but going to a homeless person and saying, well, you're alive, why aren't you happy? And realizing that people always have a system of expectation that they want for ourselves, and sometimes that has to be adjusted. And I think when you needed that medication, it was a case of, okay, I need that to survive. But then 2 years later, that might have got to the stage where no one told you about these side effects, you weren't aware it was directly linked, and then it was stopping you getting to that second step.
It's so interesting. Like, and again, we're back at the difference between existing and living. And here it's like what they wanted is they wanted me, they didn't want me to die. And what I wanted is I want to live. So there's the huge chasm between those two stages. And I know I can't be alive when I'm not creative. And their priority was, no, that just don't die. So as I said, I am so super grateful for people like Julia Cameron and also Eric Meisel, who look at artists not as where being creative is a disease in itself. And there's my quote that I mean, the one that I had to pick. As I said, I could read the whole chapter to you, but this is like, in our culture, we have demonized creativity. We are scared of it and by it. We tell scary stories about artists and how broke, nuts, crazy, drunk, selfish they are. In our culture, we are afraid of our creativity. We think it's some nitroglycerin compound that could blow us all up. Nonsense.
100%. And I think we see those stereotypes even when they're being criticized. And I know I saw a film recently, House of Gucci, that had Lady Gaga in, but Jared Leto's character was Paolo Gucci, and he was a creative. He wanted to be a designer. He wanted to design clothes for Gucci, and he was always seen by the crazy, unworthy, kind of annoying person in the Gucci family within this film. And the whole time was a struggle for his art to be recognized by his father, and this very sort of male-dominated patriarchal system of that Gucci family at the time, when it was about business. And he's like, look at my designs. And there's a heartbreaking scene where his father tells him, don't show these to anyone because they will steal them, and sort of manipulates him, and because they're not going to use them, he was saying that so he doesn't show. He was ashamed of the artist, he was ashamed of his son, and that's the whole journey throughout the film. And I think it's an excellent commentary on how creative people are treated, and it's actually a heartbreaking moment in the film because he isn't either one of the two main characters. He's a supporting character, but when you have the titles at the end where it tells you what happened to these people in real life, it turns out that this person who started in a multi-millionaire fashion dynasty in Italy actually died in poverty on the streets of London because of the way he was treated, never taken seriously, manipulated to sign his shares away, all of that kind of thing that happened to him. And it was actually one of the things that hit me the most, because we didn't see any of those scenes after. We saw him obviously leave the film in a bad state, but he kind of disappeared off into the background. And when that title card in, I thought, well, what happens in those years between him then dying in poverty? You think, coming from this background, and it's because he was never taken seriously. He was seen as neurotic, treated as neurotic, and pushed aside as a child no one wants, and the disappointment. And I think the film then portrayed that very well and then gave a real reflection on it. But jokingly or not, when I'm sat in the cinema with my mum and my sister, they're like, that's you, not in a way that they mean to mock me, because they know I understand, and they know that I know them well enough to know that it's not a direct offense. But what they're saying is that's how creative people are treated, and we see that. But what they're seeing that in the way that when they see him bring their designs and being not flamboyant, but with that same kind of nature where they want to show off their work and get the praise for it, and are proud of their work, they're seeing the links between that and me and saying that person's you. And they say that, but when we're laughing about it, I'm laughing too. Then it gets to the end, it's like he died in poverty, and I think, yeah, but maybe I don't want that person to be. And I've actually spoken about it since, because when there's a character on like that, and even if it's just like a comedy double, there's been a lot of father and son comedy duos on television at the moment, and the son's always like the useless one, or the one that, interested in creativity, and it's that kind of comic, and we laugh about it. But the thing that always stops me laughing is when it goes, and that's you, Joe. And I'm like, well, that is a comedy figure. They're putting these bad stereotypes on a character because it looks funny, but then telling someone they're that isn't helpful at all. And so I spoke to them about it. These are all lovely people, and they're not seeing they're not seeing what I'm thinking. And to be honest, this has happened obviously for a while, and we've always had these jokes, but I never articulated what I was actually feeling until this week when I was reading through. I just thought, well, I just get angry and shut. I'm like, oh, just tell them to shut up or whatever, and so stop it. And that's just kind of joking back or getting angry because I feel like the joke's on me. But I articulated to them that really these portrayals of the creative person as the person that ends up failing or is laughed at, projecting that onto me, someone who you want to be a creative person and successful, isn't helpful. And although you see things in the characters that are similar to me, we need to move part. We can laugh, and I will laugh with you because I get the humor. But then laughing at me makes me think, so is that what you really think of me? Do you think I'm crazy? And I know they don't, but there's always that doubt, and it's always that whole thing where you're in a room with new people, and do they think that is that who I am? And I know now that that's not who I am, but I feel like these stereotypes from that quote you just said haven't really gone away, even though we respect creative people, we respect the successful creative people, but do we respect our family members and friends that are doing their art projects or are creative, and we don't take them seriously? We only take the successful people seriously.
Well, first of all, it breaks my heart that you are in a situation where people push that stereotype on you. And at the same time, I mean, I know you, I know that you can handle it eloquently, but I can only imagine that it's like, it's almost like they are pushing a self-fulfilling prophecy onto you, which is not okay. And like, I think there are so many myths and paradigms around being an artist. Artists starve, artists are crazy, artists cannot be faithful to a partner, or they are completely asexual, impotent, and so on and so forth. Artists die of suicide, artists die alone. All these crippling stereotypes that are out there. And I think that is one of the reasons why I became a creativity coach, because I really want to get rid of all of these, and to say, no, it is possible to be solvent, it is possible to be happy. And then we are actually at the next issue, that when you look at a movie like House of Gucci, even if it is based on true events, it is a dramatized version of reality. And of course, a movie, a TV series, a theater play, a novel, everything needs drama. And so we don't want the happy artist. That's kind of like, we don't want it. I mean, uh, it's, we seek the drama, we want it, it's cathartic, and I don't know. And I do believe there is also a sense of punishment in there. It's like, okay, so you're an artist, so you have access to these amazing worlds, you have universes in your head. And other people, I do believe that there is a jealousy factor in there. And so yes, you can have all that, because it is like kind of balanced by all this bad stuff. And so I can feel better about myself. Okay, I might not have your imagination, but I am not depressed. So I think a happy artist, a person who stands in their creativity and who is uh, truly aligned with it, is something so scary that people can't handle that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so true. And I feel like there's so much that people don't understand about creativity, because if you don't experience something, it's so difficult to understand. But then, rather than supporting someone, which we all know how to support someone at a very basic level without understanding them, and I feel like that's missed, because if people are made into jokes, then you laugh. And yeah, and with films like that, the funny thing is that it's written by successful creative people, directed by successful creative people, filmed by successful creative people, and starring successful creative people. But
Yeah,
then the artists in the film are then suffering.
yeah.
And I think part of that might be the projection of the creator's insecurity, and they do heavily dramatize that, because this is based on real events. But I know that character was huge, must have been hugely exaggerated, and I've looked at interviews, and it is exaggerated, and it does make it a good film. And probably I think that character was the best character, one of the best characters in that film, because of the way that it provoked a reaction. And you see the other characters around, and the whole narrative of House of Gucci is about everyone's fighting, and they're fighting over the money, the power, and they're not noticing Patrizia, who Lady Gaga plays, and what she's doing behind the scenes, and her relationship with Maurizio, and her anger building up. But not only do they not notice that, which is the core of the film, that's what the film's about, is no one's noticing the artist. And it's
Mhm.
almost like that's okay, that's not, he doesn't cause a problem. If you don't notice the artist, that's fine,
Yeah.
just going to go off into the background. But he does actually lead to some downfall, because they don't bring him into the family, they don't tell him how the power in the business works, and they don't listen to how his creativity is. And so there's no connection there. So the, by the end of the film, he does connect with his father, and it's actually one of those heartbreak. I think I probably cried in the cinema, because it was such a touching thing to them to do, that I don't think films really would resolve that
Mhm.
or get through that. And it is after, because of him and his not understanding of the business, he signs the shares away, and loses their money and part of the business. And I think the father realizes, well, that's not just his fault. The way
Mhm.
I've treated and the way I've excluded and not understood is also my fault as well. And I feel like applying this back to real life is that what a shame that, you know, it takes losing everything to realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love this conversation. I think it is an important conversation to have, and I think more people should have it, artists or not artists. And speaking of applying things that we know to real life, I have to confess that I didn't do an artist date this week.
Me neither. And you confessed it to me, and I was like, yeah, same here. I just, do I say or do I not? Do I say, haha, no, you didn't do an artist date?
That would, yeah, that would have been a chance to like to establish a superior position.
And I thought no. And we were both considering, we both could have easily made up an artist date or worked something we'd done into an artist date.
Yes.
But why do you think it's important not to lie to yourself and to others like that when you're doing something that serves only you?
For me, there were a couple of reasons, and I did think a lot this week, which was not really to my advantage, I have to say. To be quite honest, I did all the tasks in the in this chapter, and there is the second one. You want to make something of it, where she actually asks us to make a collage about topics that we need to understand or things where we were hurt or whatever. And I did this the last time I did Walking in This World in 2019. And I remember I don't go for the collage like magazines and stuff. I don't do that anymore. I go for digital collages, and I made 3 on the whole. And it was actually something that I talked through with my psychologist because it was hugely triggering. And this time I thought, no, I'm not going to do that again because it was just too triggering. Avoidance, always a good thing. And then I thought, yeah, but I could actually look at the old, like from 3 years, or 2022, so 3 years ago, I could look at that, and I did, and it triggered me on a completely on a different level. And it was, on one side, it was a chance to see how far I got in the last 3 years, and on the other side, it just triggered a lot of emotional flashbacks, and the whole what you were saying before regarding boxes and how we put ourselves in there. I'm like always contemplating, do I say I live with complex PTSD or do I not say it or whatever? But the thing is, when you live with complex PTSD, the thing is that you actually live with that. And there's constantly stuff coming up, and there's things that trigger me, and emotional flashbacks, and it took me forever to understand this is an emotional flashback. And I was really, really grateful for the author who introduced me to that concept. And so in the end, I decided, no, I'm going to own my experience of this week, and it was really hard. And it is like the traumatized mind relaxes best when you put it in front of something that it knows by heart. And for me, this is, I have certain movies and a series where I go back to when I realize, okay, I am hyper aware, hyperactive, so and so on, and I need to calm down. And so I watched a lot of these things during last week, and it is really easy to say, oh well, you know what, that is actually an artist date. No, it's not. It was survival. And so I don't want to give off the expression to anybody that I know what I'm doing. It's like, yeah, I do know what I'm doing. Like I went through these books a ton of times, and I have a lot of knowledge, but that doesn't mean that my life is perfect.
Yes, 100%.
And that is a long, long way. Sorry, there's a long way to answer your questions. That's why I'm actually saying I didn't do my artist date.
Yeah, and I feel like then the question is, when you say that, it's almost like accepting that you're not perfect. And the quote that I picked out from this week that was in the margins was from Michelangelo, and he says, "I'm still learning," and I think that says exactly what you just said there, and that's okay. You understand the content, you understand why doing an artist day each week can be very helpful,
Mhm.
but we're all still learning, and the learning requires that we don't get it right all the time. And I'm not saying making mistakes, because I don't think you not doing an artist date this week and me not doing an artist date this week is a mistake. And we're both fine. I mean, it's not great because we're doing series about it, but in reality, we're okay. We're going to manage that, and we're going to try hard next week to definitely do it, I
Yes.
think. And and so that's the difference. We're still learning, and everyone's still learning. And I feel like that doesn't mean that you don't understand it. Doesn't mean to say you don't believe that it works. It means
Mm.
that it didn't happen this week, but that's okay.
Me not doing an artist date is not because I don't believe in artist dates. It's actually the contrary. I do know that they work, and I was scared of it. And so I decided, it was a decision. It was a decision. No, I'm not going to do that. I had it planned out and everything, and I was just too scared to go there. So,
But yeah, and I feel like then the whole idea of the artist date is to be an enjoyable experience or
yeah.
an enlightening experience. So maybe you got to that point where you had it planned out, and then you gave yourself the decision: am I going to go to a place that could be painful, or am I not going to go to a place that could be painful? When really the real question is am I going to do a painful artist date, or am I going to do an enjoyable artist date? And I think that was lost several decisions ago.
Well, I mean, we can go deep in there, but actually, joy is something that triggers me immensely. So that was really a decision. That sounds like fun. I'm probably gonna have fun, which would probably lead to another flashback. So I'm just not going there. So it's
So then,
it's fun
when
being me.
when it becomes as tough as that, how do you find the balance of enjoying yourself without feeling joy that triggers you?
That is a great question, and I think I'm figuring that out basically every day. So for this week, it was like I enjoy the movies that I watch on that I've watched probably 100 times. I I find joy in that, and it is kind of a safe joy. So that, I mean, that's the reason why the traumatized brain likes things that it knows, because it doesn't get triggered. It knows all the triggers, right? So um I think I lost the question.
I think you answered. I mean, in terms of finding the balance between enjoying yourself and experiencing joy that triggers you, and I feel like what you were saying is that you return to the things you know and you feel safe with, and it's about knowing yourself and knowing when to push outside of that box to try and make it larger.
Yeah.
And and this week you decided, well, I don't think this was best for me to do this week, and it was a decision that protects you. And if you make that decision every week, then of course that is limiting, and of course that you might not being triggered, but you're not having any growth at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's okay not to do this week. And and I, and I think the idea of, yeah, we can say we didn't do it because whatever, we didn't have time, or and when I was saying that, and then you said, well, actually I made the decision not to do it, and I thought, well, did I make the decision not to do it as well? I thought, yes, probably, because otherwise I would have done it, because I would have found a way.
Hmm.
And the truth is, I spent the whole week not really thinking about an artist date. And I always try to do an artist date somehow around writing. If I try and think one up, I think, okay, let me write something, because I think that when I write, I'm either writing an assignment for uni or I'm writing a project that I'm working on. So I think, well, if I do something that's more playful, I
Mhm.
can do it. But I feel like I'm putting myself in a position where then the artist state is writing, and that's me being angry at myself for not writing enough. So this space I have where I'm allowing myself to have fun, I'm making myself do something that's productive. And then that's the decision I made. And then
Mhm.
I was making up other ideas as I went along, like going to the cinema. And I made the decision not to because I thought, well, man, that's a bit silly. I'm going to the cinema on my own. How long am I spending at the cinema? Over 2 hours. I'm going to film. Am I really that keen on the film? No, I haven't heard much about it. Is it my cup of tea? Probably not. Might I enjoy it anyway? Yeah, maybe. But I've got to drive there. I've got to park there. I've got to buy the ticket. I've got to go into the cinema. I've got to sit down. I thought, so have I made a decision not to do an artist date this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Yeah, you successfully talked yourself out of it. Yes.
Very true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to have my fun artist date this week. I'm going to have it, and I can't wait to tell you about it because I actually wanted to tell you about it last week already, and I
I
didn't.
remember, and I was going to ask, and this week you're doing the same, and I'm not going to ask because I'm ready for the surprise, and I'm ready for you to update me, and I like to think that you're going to pick a day to do it on that's not too close to the end of the week.
Put it in the calendar. I mean, isn't that like it's like the one of the most effective things in coaching. Put it in the calendar, and there's this saying of when you don't plan, you plan to fail, something
Yeah,
like that. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so true. Put it in the calendar, and like it
yeah.
will help in the
If
long
you
run.
fail to plan, you plan to fail, and I think this is an important point because this year I've been using an online calendar a lot more and scheduling everything in, and it's so easy not to. I've been getting emails, I think two I've answered in the past 24 hours, which is a lot to think about, where people have asked, so can we do this meeting? What time is best for you? What day is best for you? And I'm looking at my calendar and thinking, well, do I want to do it there? Probably not. And I'm okay, right. I need to pick 3 times that work for me. I need to email them. I'm thinking, well, are they really going to work for the other person? Do I want to put it into my calendar, or shall I say to them, just message me when you feel like it, or I'll let you know nearer the time. I'm like,
Mm.
no, okay, these are the times we're going to do. And it's so hard to want to pin myself down and fill in those boxes. But when those boxes are filled in, you're doing that for yourself. And I feel like that's the right way to do the artist date, is to have it in your calendar and plan it in advance, which is, I've never done that. I
Mhm.
did it maybe when we did it a year and a half ago for the artist way, but this year I haven't. And my
Yeah.
artist dates haven't been very planned, and they have been last minute, and they have been, okay, was this in, and I've done things and thought, okay, I'll half do this for an artist date, and then afterwards I think, well, was it good enough? Should I do something else? I thought, no. And I know that, yeah, you then fall into the trap where it comes to the weekend.
Mm.
I know I've got the call with you on Monday. What do I do? And that was the cinema. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. But if I planned the week before and thought, okay, let's have an easy one. Let's go to the cinema. And I looked at what's on and booked a ticket. Well, then there would be no getting out of it.
Mhm. It is so interesting. It never ceases to fascinate me how I suppose you did the morning pages.
Yeah,
S- So we are so it's okay to do the extra work, but the idea of fun and like 2 hours of fun and not being productive is something that is so hard for so many of us. Yeah, it's I find it very, very fascinating.
yeah, and especially on our own, I think that makes a big difference. And I know that you've spoken a lot about solitude,
Mm.
about doing things on your own. Where like, well, what have I done that's fun and relaxing? Well, look, I can think of lots of things, but I've done them with my family. I've played games with my dad and my sister, and I did play the game for a bit on my own, but
Mhm.
that wasn't really an artist. It wasn't intentional. That was just me doing things that weren't productive. But when I consciously wanted to have fun, we played a game on Grand Theft Auto on
Mhm.
the Xbox, we sat round and I did an invincibility cheat code, and it was how long we could survive with a wanted level after the 5 minutes was up, and we were timing each other to see how long we could run away for and survive. And I mean, that was really fun, but that wasn't on my own. Would I have done that with myself? No, I wouldn't have sat there timing myself. I wouldn't have really bothered. And that's where that's another aspect of that limiting ourselves from having fun, is that if we're not doing it with people, and I'm trying to move past that, because instead of doing the things I want to do there and then, I'm adding another layer of, okay, let's find someone to do that with. Let's
Mhm.
work out how we're going to do that, and let's plan it together, which is something that does take a long time. It's not easy to do that for a lot, especially if it's a complex thing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of trying to go on a few different mini breaks and making use of the time I've got spare this year to fly to different countries and see different cities. And I'm planning on doing that. And I thought, well, I'll do it on my own. And it's still like, well, should I really be doing this on my own? Is it strange to do it on my own? What are people going to think of me? What are people that I know going to think of me? And when I get there, what are people they're going to think of me? You know, who goes on holiday on their own? You know, do I have to
Mhm.
pretend that it's a business trip? Do I have to make up something like I'm going to write a blog series or a column article in a local magazine, and which I can do. I can say I'm doing like a series of solo travels and I'm doing it to write about it as an experiment. But that's just steering it away from the fact that I'm doing it for my own fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it makes me want to do everything to bring up another excuse, which no one's really challenging. Everyone's happy that I'm doing it. But again, they're slightly concerned that I'm doing it on my own, because, well, what happens if something goes wrong? Who are you going to rely on? I thought,
Mhm.
well, it's funny how we spend so long of our lives being told to rely on ourselves and be an adult, and then once we get to that place, it's like, okay, now find someone else to rely on.
Interesting. Really interesting. That sounds to me like something you could explore in the morning pages.
I think so.
Yeah.
Something I haven't actually. I haven't seen any morning, and it's funny because all the week it's been something that I've been thinking about, and thinking about planning and looking at websites, looking at information, but I haven't touched it once in the morning pages.
Mm.
And considering how in 3 pages every morning that I cover everything that's going on in my life, the way I've just completely missed that out is almost as intentional as not doing an artist day.
I know I have this tendency as well, where I write morning pages, and then when I'm done, it's like I wanted to write about this issue that's been plaguing me for 3 weeks. It's kind of like we're getting avoidant with ourselves in the morning pages. And when I notice that, I take a post-it and write down the topic and put it right in my journal. And then the next morning, it's usually, oh, there's a post-it. Does that mean I have to write about this now? It's like it is so it's I mean, human beings again, it never ceases to fascinate me how we work and how we trick ourselves in doing things and not doing other things. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and even us who are noticing these things, the progress is so slow, because a lot of these things we encountered as issues when we did the artist way a year and a half ago, and they're still not easy, but
Right.
we're noticing some progresses, and we're noticing some things like having fun, which is still quite difficult. And we've spoken a lot about artist dates, and I feel like because when we do them, it's such an accomplishment. But if we spoke about morning pages each time, something that I don't always do, and I feel like when I get to a weekend, it's harder to do them because I don't wake up early. I just don't set my alarm, and then I sleep in, and I think, well, it's 11 now. I need to go and do daytime things,
Mm.
and that's okay because I don't, I do them most days, and it, it's not something I've got an issue with. I don't have an issue doing, say, okay, this is productive, this is going to help me in the long run, this is going to make my day easier. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then it's like, okay, let's go and have fun.
Mhm.
That still hasn't got better for me. And I still struggle with that. But I know I'm making some progress. Like this week, there's 2 different clubs at university I'm going to go to and try out. And I think we spoke about it last week, the excuses I was giving myself, I was blaming it on COVID, I was blaming it on, oh, why didn't I do it at the start of the year? And I thought, okay, no, let's just book them in. I saw a poster for a trial session for archery, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And I then saw a stall in one of the squares at uni with a guy, and he had a rack of swords and this like model with like a helmet on, and it said he wants to set up a kendo club, and he's trying to get enough people to join. And I thought, okay, here it goes. So I'm doing that tonight.
It sounds like you're experimenting with having fun.
Yeah, because I thought, well, if it goes wrong, it's fine. I don't have to go again.
Yeah. I love it. I want pictures of the kendo.
Maybe I'll have. I'm always that person that wants to take photos at places, and because for my job, I am always taking photos. I take photos everywhere because
Yeah.
I like sharing things, and then people look at you like, "Why are you taking a photo now? You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I just nice."
Yeah. I mean, I can talk with you for hours, and and I think we have to wrap it up for our lovely audience. There's one final quote that I have to, because I think it's like an envelope for everything that we talked about, especially in the first part of the conversation, and it's from the second essay. It's therapy adjusts us to the world. Art adjusts the world itself. And I would like that to be like kind of like my North Star for the coming week.
I hope so. I hope you follow that North Star, and I hope that next week goes better for you than the week just gone does.
Yes, me too. Me too. Okay, is there anything else that you would like to add to
I think we've
these?
covered it all, and I feel like that quote was a great point to close on. And I want to thank you for bringing that up. I want you to thank you for reflecting on this week that hasn't gone so well. And I want to thank you for being hopeful for next week and for this wonderful conversation.
Same here. It's always a pleasure. It deepens the whole experience of going through the book. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's watching on YouTube. If you're still here, thank you so, so much. I know it's a challenge to stay for almost an hour. So thank you very much. I hope you got something